The Protection of Sovereignty Bill. This is one of the biggest debates in Uganda right now. All over social media, all over the tabloids, and all over the newspapers, we're now seeing that the Protection of Sovereignty Bill, which is now almost becoming an act, is now the topic of public dismay and also public tabloids. Well, in this edition of Legal News Daily, I'm discussing number one, why are Ugandans disgruntled about the Protection of Sovereignty Bill? Number two, what does the Protection of Sovereignty Bill stand for? Number three, what are the legalities and legal issues around the Protection of Sovereignty Bill? And most importantly, what are the implications to the common man, to the common Ugandan, if the Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026 is passed into an act, and what does this mean for all Ugandans moving forward? So, welcome to Legal News Daily, and this is Castle of this moving forward. Welcome to Legal News Daily. I'm your usual host Terry Kahuma on this channel, and like I always say, Legal News Daily is our daily legal news segment where we discuss all things national and international, political, social, but most importantly, legal. Now, straight to the point. This is a very sad segment because the Protection of Sovereignty Bill is upon the horizon to be passed as an act. First of all, by the time this Protection of Sovereignty Bill was brought about in the halls of Parliament, this came about from the NRM caucus, which is the National Resistance Movement caucus. This is the annual retreat that the National Resistance Movement Party and its members have in Chankwanzi, where they normally discuss about affairs of the country's economy, social, political, legal, and most importantly, how the economy should be governed and how the people of Uganda should be governed by, especially the new cabinet that is coming in by the current National Resistance Movement Party, which is the ruling party of Uganda. Now, why am I bringing up all of this? It is because that is how a bill starts. I've always described to you on this channel how a bill becomes a law. A bill are either a set of thoughts, problems, grievances, and most importantly, problems that a certain bill and act are aiming to be solved by Parliament and by the different arms of government. Now, by the time the ruling party, it doesn't necessarily have to be the National Resistance Movement Party. It can be of any other country. It can be the Democrats in the United States. It can be the House of, let's say, Democrats in the United Kingdom, or it can be any country in which the ruling party has to now come up with a bill. So they have a collection of problems that the people have been talking about or giving their cries to Parliament, since Parliament are the legislators of a particular law or bill. So therefore, if the thoughts and problems of the people are discussed by the NRM caucus, they are then tabled by the government chief whip, who is also a National Resistance Movement Party member, who is Hamson Oboa. So if Hamson Oboa is the chief whip of Parliament, then therefore he's going to now come into Parliament and state that after the NRM caucus, we have now come up with the Protection of Sovereignty Bill. This Protection of Sovereignty Bill is now tabled within the halls of Parliament. Now, what I mean by the halls of Parliament? Definitely in the House of Parliament. It is then discussed by the parliamentarians. These are the members of Parliament, the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, and the Speaker of Parliament. It is then discussed among all the members of Parliament. Either you're opposition, either you are an independent member of Parliament, or you belong to the National Resistance Movement Party. Now, if it is accepted after being debated for a good amount of time, they first table it, then they roll it out in the tabloids and the newspapers. They want to hear what the different citizens of Uganda think about that particular bill. When they hear the feedback and when they hear also what the parliamentarians have voted concerning that bill, if it is an overwhelming two-thirds means a majority of the parliamentarians. If two-thirds of the parliamentarians then state that indeed we want this bill to pass, then it is then passed by both the deputy and by the Speaker of Parliament, and therefore it is now sent from the legislature, which is Parliament, to the executive. And who is the head of the executive? This is the President of the Republic of Uganda, in this case, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, who was a recently elected President of the Republic of Uganda. So if President Museveni has this bill on his table that has reached to him, the Protection of Sovereignty Act or bill, by the time he looks at it and reads through it and sees that indeed it is okay, then he will sign and assent to it. However, if he sees that the Protection of Sovereignty Bill has issues, then he'll first send it back to Parliament with a few or many amendments that he could have, and therefore once the amendments have now been sorted out by Parliament Chief Whip, then therefore it will now be sent back with the amendments that the President made. Therefore, he will then sign and assent to it. Signing means he is giving it authenticity, and assenting to it is stating that I, President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, I have signed the Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026 into an act, and therefore I have assented, meaning I'm now giving it my presidential seal for it to now become an act. Why is the Protection of Sovereignty Bill now a big problem to Ugandans? It is three basic issues. Number one, it targets the common citizen. And how does it target the common citizen? We now know that so many Ugandans are living abroad. They have gone there to do the common thing that we call cheyo, meaning manual labor in different countries. Now, the Protection of Sovereignty Bill, I'll just table the particular highlights which are causing a lot of grievances to the citizens of Uganda. It targets people who are living outside and naming them foreign agents, or therefore people who are no longer Ugandans. So the Protection of Sovereignty Bill states that any particular person who is living outside Uganda, whether you are a Ugandan or not, considers you a foreigner, and therefore it states that if you are sending money back to any citizen of Uganda, be it your friend, be it a family member, be it for business, then that has to be checked. And who checks it? The person who checks it is the Minister of Internal Affairs. So the Protection of Sovereignty Bill, to be sovereign, means that any person, entity or country should be free from any influence. So the Protection of Sovereignty Bill is stating, or the premise for why the parliamentarians, especially the National Resistance Movement Party members, are stating that we want Uganda to be foreign. But foreign from what is what the people are asking. If at all any foreigners are trying to influence Uganda, especially economically or politically, they want that bill to be targeted specifically to maybe enemies of the state, or maybe enemies that want to infiltrate the Ugandan system. Now, the Protection of Sovereignty Bill, like I said, targets Ugandans who are living abroad. Also, it states that any particular entity, whether you're an individual living in Uganda, whether you are an NGO, NGO means a non-profit organization, whether you are an entity that solely survives on money that is coming in from abroad, whether you're an individual that is working in an NGO, meaning a non-profit organization, or whether you are basically benefiting from a relative who works either in Saudi Arabia, France, USA, UK, then you are affected by this particular thing. Economically, it means that this particular bill contravenes your right to have economic prosperity and your economic rights to be able to make money in your country, whether that money is from Uganda or abroad. Now, this particular bill, what has really annoyed most people about it is concerning the fact that people are now being called foreigners or agents of foreign interest while they are born as Ugandans. The Constitution states that for anyone to be a citizen or to be called a citizen of Uganda, that person either has to be born in Uganda, that person has to have acquired citizenship through registration, through birth, through naturalization, and through origin, or they are also a dual citizen. So there are 5 ways of becoming a citizen. Now, if a Ugandan was born in Uganda and then they went and worked abroad, whether in Saudi Arabia or all over the world, any country that is not Uganda, and they are sending money to Uganda, then according to this particular bill, one of the provisions is that that person is called a foreigner, and therefore if they send money to Uganda or they go around, let's say, spoiling the good name of the Ugandan government according to the provisions of the Protection of Sovereignty Bill, then that means that that person is considered an agent of foreign interest, and therefore that person is also liable to being either imprisoned or also facing a fine, or they're going to pay a very huge fine of about 20 currency points. When you look at what I've just stated, any person being born in Uganda is definitely a Ugandan. When this Protection of Sovereignty Bill states that the further you're outside of Uganda, you are considered a foreigner or an agent of foreign interest, then that means your constitutional right as a citizen who was born in Uganda is being contravened, and therefore it is being interfered with, and therefore that means that you're not being called a Ugandan in actual sense, yet you are a Ugandan. Now, what does contravening the constitution mean? A bill or a certain bill or act can go opposite or can oppose your national and natural rights as a citizen. Now, if a person in Sweden sends money to his relative, a lot of money, or has been sending it in a lot of bits, and therefore he's now caught by the Protection of Sovereignty Bill, that means that he's going to be considered an agent of foreign interest, and therefore if upon returning back to Uganda he fits the elements of being indicted under that particular law or that bill which will become a law, then that means that he's now going to be either charged with a huge fine or he'll be imprisoned. So I think you can see the fact that a person was born in Uganda, they're definitely a Ugandan by birth. This provision is now calling them a foreigner or an agent of foreign interest. So that is where there are so many redundancies and legal loopholes in this Protection of Sovereignty Bill. What does redundancy mean? It means that something is being repeated. So if there are laws and rules and regulations within the law, which already address what the Protection of Sovereignty Bill is coming in to address, then that means that either you're calling the other act stupid, or you're calling them non-laws, or you are now stating that the mother law of the land, which is the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, does now not act or is no longer the mother law of the land. Let's talk about separation of powers. Where is this particular bill coming from? We stated that it's coming from the NRM caucus. That is the origin of this bill. So does that mean that according to the Constitution, which provides for separation of powers, we have the executive, we have the judiciary, and we have the legislature? If a certain bill is coming from the executive and not from the legislature, then does that mean that the legislature is still in power, or does that mean that the executive is now putting in a lot of orders in that the legislature has now become almost a must-do or a puppet for the executive? I leave that question for you. Now, most importantly, what are the other leaders, either clergy, either Muslim cleric or Orthodox, what are the religious leaders saying about this particular bill? The Muslim cleric, who is in the Islamic faith, the Orthodox and Christian leaders are all saying that within our individual faiths, we all receive money from either Saudi Arabia for the Muslims or from the Vatican, Italy, for the Catholics, and also the Protestants, in brackets Anglican, are receiving money from the Church of the UK and also from the United States. So you find that all these different religious groups are receiving money from abroad and have been doing so ever since Uganda became a British protectorate in 1890. So that means that all the church-founded schools, King's College Budo, St. Mary's College Kisubi, Kayaza High, St. Mary's College Chitovu, whatever it is, they are all receiving money from their parent countries. Now, that means that funding is going to stop. If funding is more than 400 million, it's going to stop to churches, to church-founded hospitals like Rubaga Cathedral, to Mengo Hospital, and you name it. So many institutions, not only the religious leaders, not only schools, but even hospitals, which receive huge donations in terms of medical aid, in terms of money meant for patients, are now going to be disrupted by the Protection of Sovereignty Bill. What can the Ugandans do moving forward? I think honestly the only way that if this bill is signed and assented to by the president, then the only way that Ugandans could challenge this particular bill is to challenge it by way of a petition, and that petition is going to be in the courts of law in Uganda. So therefore you have to petition that this law is null and void and redundant in so many provisions, just like the current Computer Misuse Amendment Act was considered null and void by the courts of law. Well, let's see where the country is going to go moving forward. My name is truly Terry Kahuma. Please let me know what I should talk about in a future video. Until next time, I'll see you. Bye-bye.
Ogamba otya mwana wa mama nkulaba opapa topapa nkulaba odduko yagala kuscrollinga kuyitawo wano naye toyitawo sooka okwatiriemu katono stoppinga muko katono eddakiika nga 4 zijja kumala ate mwana wattu nkusaba okankwatiremu kakwatemu kasobole okutuuka wenjagala katuuke kakati olunaku lwejjo General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni yavuddeyo n'asambajja ebyo byonna ebiri mu kulabikirwa mu tteeka ly'obwetengereze Protection of Sovereignty Bill.
Kulembeze w'eggwanga Yoweri Kaguta Museveni yeeganye byonna ebiri mu bbago ly'etteeka ku bwetengereze bw'eggwanga eriri mu kukubaganyizibwako ebirowoozo n'ekigendererwa ky'okutangira abagwira okwenyigira mu nsonga za kuno. Museveni agamba nti bwe yatunudde mu tteeka lino abaali baze bava ku nsonga ze yabakuutira okusimbako amannyo ate ne badda mu kuwagikamu obuwaayiro obukosa abantu abataabiriimu. Katono alagidde nampala ababaka aba NRM mu Parliament okuggyayo ebbago lino liddemu libagibwe buto nga bwe yali alagidde. Omusasi waffe kaabitwe mu bujjuvu.
So, oyo ye General Museveni. That's him. Hey, that's the real General Museveni. Nenjagala twebuuza ebibuuzo bino wammanga. So, General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni akeera ku makya n'atuula n'alowooza okuleeta etteeka eddungi ennyo n'ayita kabineti ye n'atuula ne bakubaganya ebirowoozo ne bakkiriziganya ku tteeka eryo. Njagala tugende mpola wano. Etteeka eri wamala okulirowoozaako era ne lidraftingibwa. Etteeka eri nga ssaabawolereza bwa gavumenti alina okuliyisaamu amaaso era n'awabula General Museveni nti lino etteeka lisobola okuba n'obuzibu bwe buti ne bwe buti lisobola okubeera eddungi. Twogera ku ssaabawolereza wa gavumenti goyinza okuyita Anthony General Kiryowa Kiwanuka, of which Kiryowa Kiwanuka ono atuula ku cabinet. Twogera ku cabinet erondebwa General Kaguta Museveni. Twogera ku cabinet etuula either buli Monday oba weeyagalidde okutuula ng'agikyeyalinga ye General Kaguta Museveni, oba gwasindise gwa omusigire goyinza okuyita delegate. Kati Anthony General Government Kiryowa Kiwanuka n'akwata Birwe n'agisindika ewa Minister of Finance, Minister w'ebyenfuna, okulaba nti oba Birwe eno tebe ne implications zonna naddala ku kkowe ery'ebyensimbi. Twogera ku Minister wa Finance alondebwa General Kaguta Museveni. Eyo yonna cabinet. Minister wa Finance n'agenda mu maaso n'okukkiriziganya ne Birwe. Era Anthony General wa Government Kiryowa Kiwanuka Birwe eno n'agikwasa mu butongole. State Minister wa Internal Affairs omukulu General David Muhoozi naye Cabinet Minister, State Cabinet Minister. General David Muhoozi State Minister wa Internal Affairs ne bakwata Birwe ne Anthony General wa Government Kiryowa Kiwanuka ne bagireta ne bagite bolinga floor ya Parliament wane bagireta mu Parliament. Parliament ekulemberwa Anita Anet Among ne deputy we Thomas Tayewa, bano bonna balondebwa General Kaguta Museveni. Twogera ku Parliament nga speaker wa Parliament yolede yakubadde ebirayiro nti buli nnya lya party n'eri omwana n'eri abasisiters, father, son and daughters bakiririzamu. Kitegeeza nti biiru yonnejja ng'ereeteddwa gavumenti nga General Museveni yagiwoomyemu omutwe, kkiriza obagaana ejja kuyita. Kakati biiru eno nejja netuuka ne mu kakiiko ka Parliament ak'amateeka n'ebyokwerinda. Ba stakeholders bonna bavunanyizibwa ku biiru eno ne bayitibwa mu bukiiko buno, akina abantu, akina bannaddiini, civil organizations ez'enjawulo zonna, banks zonna, nekituuka ne Government Bank okutuuka okujja mu kakiiko kano. Wiikisi bbiri nga biiru eno erimu kubaganyizibwako birowoozo. Ensi n'ensi yonna n'eraga nti biiru eno tekkaanya nayo era tekkiriziganya nayo. Week says, then after 2 weeks oluvannyuma lw'aba stakeholders bonna okuyitibwa ne balaga nti biiru eno teyina kyegenda kuyamba muntu wa wansi. Biiru eno erina ebigendererwa ebibi ennyo eri bannansi. General Museveni had to come out after 2 weeks. N'abagamba nti bino ebiri mu biiru eno tetwabiteesaako, si bye nateesaako. Mu bufunze kitegeeza nti clause 1, clause 2, clause 3, clause 4, clause 5 ezo zonna zaasimagolingibwa. Kitegeeza nti baminisita bano abatuula mu cabinet basobola osimagolinga clauses zino zonna ne ziyingira biiru eno. Naye nkujjukiza nti twogera ku baminisita abatuula ku cabinet kyeyalingirwa General Museveni ne delegate. Kati njagala weebuuze mu bwongo obwo ne mu ndowoozayo nti zigundi clauses zino 5 zonna ezaasimagolingwa ne ziteekebwa muno General Museveni yali tazimanyiiko era abadde tazitegeera nga tazimanyi, nga Anthony General kwabadde asimbye olukongoolo bepo ne State Minister wa Internal Affairs David Muhoozi. Kati gwe oyagala kuŋŋamba nti General David Muhoozi State Minister bepo ne ssaabawolereza wa gavumenti basimagolinga clauses zino ne baziteeka mu biiru eziri against ne mukama waabwe General Museveni nti yali abagambye mu ntandikwa. Kati then wano wenjagala ofune sense. So wezibanga clauses zino 5 kazaalabulwa nga General Museveni agamba ye teyazirowoozaako era size zaali zina okuba mu biiru. Ate nga clauses zino 5 in fact zemulabangire ez'ekisirusiru ze zimakinga biiru eno okuba ng'estandinga. Era clauses zino 5 zezali ekigendererwa kya biiru eno. Kati then that means nti wajjamu clauses zino 5 the bill ceases to be. Eba tekyalina bulamu era eba tekyalina mugaso. Yes, they will create a storm. Then they will come as those to settle that storm. then you praise them. Kakati General Museveni ajja creatinga wo omuyaga ogw'amaanyi ennyo ate ajje nga arwanyisa omuyaga ogwo era gusetolinge. Omuyaga ogwo amala gusetolinga guveeyo okuba enduulu n'engalo ennene ogambe yo waffe. Yes, that's General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. This bill was not a diversion. Tebakole kino. Eno bill teyali diversion. The bill was intentional. Erezo clauses ziwalabye naye zaali mu kuwakanya kyekyali ekigendererwa kya bill eno. Gwebuuze lwaki yakava mu FDC Professor Yusuf Nsibambi bill eno agisimbidde kkooli n'abava agisimbidde kule yagambe ejja kuyita kwagwake keetonye bye yakugamba ge mazima. Gwebuuze lwaki abadde avaayo yenna okukuba bill eno babadde bamuyita kubanga azinira ku ntoli z'abazungu is a foreigner. Okategede so yogwe bayita General Museveni. Yoyo ye General Museveni ajja kujja akuterewo ekibeera atakulage nti ye mununuzi wo.